We're getting better and better at that one.
I think so. It's so slick. So
Yeah, yeah.
chilled, right? Can you feel the
Yeah.
vibe?
Good. Mate, you're in the zone, I can tell you. You're brimming. Absolutely spiffing off the weekend.
Because I've just slept for like 12 hours.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, you get like 3.5 hours sleep or 4.5 hours sleep in the Prem. You're like, oh, gross. Oh, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40K Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by my good friend Vic Vijay. Together, we discuss 40K and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen. Alrighty, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 40K Fireside. We're hitting you up with episode 4, being produced just a measly day after the conclusion of the London Grand Tournament. If you're a new listener, welcome to the 40K Fireside, and if you're a returning listener, welcome back as well. I really appreciate everyone coming back and having a listen. In addition to that, we had just a metric ton of people come up to Vic and myself at the London Grand Tournament. People from all over the globe, which for us was really kind of insightful as to kind of the outreach we've had with this podcast so far, and provide just amazing feedback. Nothing but positive feedback. Everyone kind of saying, keep what you guys are doing. We're really enjoying it. So we just want to say thank you if you've come up and given us a piece of feedback in person, or if you've dropped a piece of feedback on our YouTube videos or something on the Reddit post or Facebook post. We really appreciate that. Keeps us going and keeps us motivated to keep doing better. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Vic, and he'll discuss what we're going to be talking about today.
Hi guys, welcome back. And I'm also pretty humbled by the feedback that we received. And we received so much positive feedback that kind of keeps us going and doing this, and people are actually finding it useful, which is great. And we hope to continue that with episode number 4, where we're just going to finish up the intro shortly, and then we're going to move on to the main topic, which is talking about the London GT. Now, there's a huge number of games between the two of us, so we're going to try and pick out important things and kind of give you guys not only our journey and our story through the event, but also kind of hopefully give you some learning points as well that you can take away for your competitive games. Once we've gone through the London GT, which might take a little bit of time, we do have a few interesting discussion topics for today. We wanted to kind of touch on kind of what our aims are going forward and where we see ourselves following a big event like the London GT. But also, we wanted to talk about where the meta is and what potentially we'd like to see change with the balanced data slate. And finally, Leagues of Votann did get some adjustments made by Games Workshop, and we wanted to talk a little bit more about our thoughts about, was it enough?
Was it enough? You'll find out in part 3. Let's kick it over to part 2. That wraps up part 1. We hope you're enjoying listening, and we'll be back shortly with part 2. Alright everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the 40K Fireside. This is where we're going to be covering the London GT and our experience. Primarily we're going to be talking about Vic, because if you don't know already, Vic took home 3rd place at the London Grand Tournament, and I bombed out to lose against the overall winner of the tournament, which doesn't feel too bad. But I mean, Vic had an absolute killer of a weekend. The guy went in and absolutely destroyed everything. And a lot of racks as well. So spoiler alert, he had a great weekend. And I'm just absolutely so stoked for him. He took an absolute powerhouse of a list, and it really just outperformed, I think, both of our expectations, and I think everyone at the event, but we'll probably get more into that in part 3. But if you don't know the London Grand Tournament, it's the largest tournament in the whole of Europe, covering about 720 players that showed up, I think. And all in all, though, across all the game systems they have in the London Grand Tournament, I think there's about 1,400 players at the event center. So maybe if someone can drop a comment and let me know if that's the largest board games event in Europe or in the world, I'd be really keen to know. Because, look, when you guys get there, it's absolutely phenomenal. The crowd is amazing. Everyone is so happy to be there. There's so many great board games, card games as well, even. Such a good vibe all around. But the tournament, nonetheless, comprised of the Invitational, which happened on the Friday, which was a 3-game series, and then 1 game on the Saturday, knockout. And then it comprised of the main event for 40K singles, which is 3 events on the Saturday, 3 to 4 events on the Sunday, and then 3 events on the Monday. So all the way to a true undefeated player. So it's an absolutely enormous tournament, done really well. And before we go into the games, I'd just like to say shout out to Zach for organizing it, because it was run absolutely phenomenally, completely smooth. There was a very little any drama. There was no operational issues. The food was great. Beverages were great as well. So I think just pulling something off like that is a really momentous thing, and I'm just really proud of Zach for doing that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a massive achievement to pull that together. And, I've seen him improve the London GT and his events as time goes on. And I think this is kind of the culmination of all of his hard work. Every single aspect of it, from the logistics, the timekeeping, the judging, the toilet facilities. There was so many toilets everywhere. It was
Yeah.
amazing. And, there was 5 food carts there, as well as the most incredible coffee kind of stand
Yep.
I've ever had. So yeah,
Yeah, you couldn't really. There was nothing to really complain about. Which, 40K players, we do like to complain about the event sometimes. But yeah, enough of that. Let's go straight on to the Invitational, where Vic decided to play. So a bit of context: I decided not to play the Invitational. I had an extremely stressful last couple of weeks at work, and my parents are arriving from New Zealand. So for that reason, I decided not to play. But Vic did decide to play. So that's kind of our differing decisions there, and I think we talked about that in episode 3. But the Invitational Tournament is a mix of kind of content creators and high-end players in a pseudo-seeded bracket, and it's a 16-player event. I think a couple of people dropped,
Mhm.
but basically it's 4 rounds knockout, true winner. So Vic, you were playing the same list you played at the London Grand Tournament, which in episode 3, if you want to check it out, he goes through the entire list, Emperor's Children. So let us. What was your round 1?
Yeah, so with my Emperor's Children, I went into the tournament and I had 3 games on the Friday before the main event started. And my first round was against Danny Everson, and Danny
Mm.
Everson's a long time kind of tournament player. He's one of the competitive players rather than one of the content creators in this event. And Danny was bringing a really good Necron list, I'd say, and
Hmm.
I know Danny is extremely competent. He's been applying for Team England, etc. Um, the big difference with his list was he was running 2 of the Doomside flyers, which I think are one of the more they're the third best flyer in the game, in my
Mm.
opinion.
It's a bit of a curveball in the list as well, right?
It's a bit of
Mm.
a difference, and it's not the only Doomsides I played at the event, actually. And to be honest, I was quite impressed with them because what actually happened in this game is that I was unable to kill the Doomsides. So
Mm.
the way that Danny played it, he maximized the buffs on the Doomsides, and he played them out of strategic reserves. So the
Wow.
Doomsides do gain core; they gain all of the rerolls from the Silent King. So on paper, it looks like, okay, they've got 3 big shots and then 10
Mm.
little Tesla shots. That's not going to do anything. But when you give them full rerolls to like hit, wound, everything, it massively adds up. So, yeah. Danny was playing with kind of the Silent King, the usual kind of Scarab Swarms, Scorpic Destroyers, Wraiths. He had a few Tomb Blades, and essentially it's a list that was built around the damage output from a big unit of Destroyers.
Hmm.
When we started playing this game, we were playing an Abandoned Sanctuaries, which is immediately an advantage for me because that's the mission where he can't pre-game move. And pretty much every Necron player is taking the pre-game move and making their whole army OPSEC. So
Yeah,
uh,
that's definitely the mission you want to catch them on.
that's a good start.
Mm.
So we played this game out. I don't have the exact scores with me because when we submitted the scores for the invitation, we just had to put 100 and 0 because it was a
Mm.
knockout, entirely knockout event. Um, and we played an extremely tight game. I think Dave came over to my table. Oh no, someone else came. Malik came over to my table, and he was
Hmm.
messaging our group. And I told Malik, "Look, Malik, like this is really close. I've lost half my army. He's lost half his army.
Mm.
But what actually happened was, despite the fact that we had very similar amounts of models on the board, he wasn't scoring any primary during this game.
Mm.
So he was getting 0, 0, 0 on the primary. And then by the end of the game, we both only had a few models left on the table. And unfortunately, my score was significantly higher there.
Which is, I'm just going to stop you there, which is interesting, right?
Mm.
Because that's a direct consequence of playing the Doom sites, in my opinion. The Doom
Mm.
sites do not contribute anything to the Necron game plan of winning primary or winning the secondary,
Hmm.
right? So that's the big trade off you take with them, right? And it's funny that you mentioned, like, I just ignored the Doom sites because I was like thinking to myself, well, you just shoot them with Blastmaster straight away and they would almost crumble.
Mhm.
But you said you didn't actually shoot them at all, which, when you think about it, too, makes more sense because you're actually just trying to play the secondary and primary game, and you're going to probably outtrade them in the middle of the board anyway.
Exactly. So there was a decision point where it was like, I can deal with these doom sides, but like, do I care if I get tabled
Mm,
here? It doesn't
yeah,
matter. Like, all I need to do is just really put pressure on him with points. And yeah, and that's how it ended up. But I have to say that Danny was probably one of the very best, like, actual technical players I played all event, and I had a
awesome.
really enjoyable first game there.
Yep, and
Uh,
Danny plays a lot on TTS as well. I know he's been practicing,
he
so
does.
shout out to him. In fact, Danny and I played in Birmingham semi-finals for the Super Major as well, where we played really well, and I just had a list advantage there. But yeah, nice. What was his? What was the round two?
Round two moved on to an exceptional player called Malik Amin Rubio, who is one of the founders of the team that me and Dave play for, which is
He's a
Dice
bit
Down.
rusty these days, isn't he? Though
He's a little bit rusty. He's semi-retired now. So
you're
Malik
beating up an
is
old man.
Malik is not playing kind of, he's not following the meta or playing the very best list in the meta. He's invited to
Mm,
this purely on his kind of legacy and what a good player he is, player skill wise.
for sure.
But army wise, he was bringing GSC,
Mm,
and he brought a really interesting GSC army. I'd say that the GSC army that's come to light at the moment is the one that Innis was running, which was running
mhm,
multiple units of big bike squads. Now, Malik did have one big bike squad with a 5-up Feel No Pain, 5-up in, really tough to kill,
mhm.
and brings back, I think it was D3 models a turn.
D3 bikes or something
Oh
like
my
that. Yeah, quad bikes, which
gosh,
is like 12 wounds. Yeah,
unkillable.
yeah.
And then he had two big units of aberrants, and then a few like shooty units, big units of shooty guys, and
Mm.
one unit of punchy guys. And when I say shooty, I mean they're not really very shooty. When I say punchy, they're really punchy. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how
2
GSC
units of
work.
aberrants. Yeah,
Yeah, the aberrants, yeah, the
2
aberrants.
units of aberrants and 1 neophyte hybrids with 4 rock drills. I want to say off
That's
the top
right,
of my
and
head.
the
Yeah,
shooter units are called acolytes, I think. Is that
acolytes.
right?
There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's it. And then the supporting host of characters as well.
What
And
was the overall flow of that game?
the flow was interesting. So I moved in. So Malik went first, which is not ideal for him. But then
Mm,
he was able to deep strike one turn earlier. So his first turn, he jostled for position. He put his bikes onto an objective. I completely underestimated how tough those bikes were, and I killed 3, and he brought 3 back. So essentially, my first turn was I killed nothing, and then his second turn. His whole army kind of appeared, and his whole
Hello.
army appeared. I had failed, I think, all of the buffs on my Terminators. He
Great.
charged my Terminators with his entire army and tried to kill some Noise Marines. The problem is it's so swingy trying to deal with the Noise Marines. You
Mm,
end up kind of killing 2 or 3 here and there. He
yep.
didn't quite kill a Venomcrawler, so his shooting was completely ineffective. That's how it felt.
Hmm.
But his combat was interesting. Now he had to get off fight last on me, which he just about managed to both push through. And
Wait, so
then
he did or didn't get it?
he did. So he
Okay.
failed the spell,
Mm,
rerolled, failed the spell,
mm,
and then he had to make a hit, I think.
mm. Was a crossfire or exposed or
Yeah,
something
it
that can make you fight
exposed
last on a strat? Yeah,
exactly,
that's a great hit.
and he almost missed that. I think he got a single hit to make me expose, so he was stressed. And then
Got him.
he had to make his 3d6 pick the 2 highest charge. He failed it
Yeah,
the
great.
first time. Classic. He rerolled and he got it. So he got his 2 aberrant units and the the kind of punchy big unit in as
So he
well.
had to do a lot more work, but he got there in the
He
end.
did. He was sweating
Yeah.
through that. The heart rate was racing, and he managed to get in. And I think he killed 8 out of the 10 Terminators
Yeah,
there.
that's with the aberrants, right?
That's yeah.
And they reroll to wound, I want to say off the top of my head, hitting on 3s, rolling 1s or something, and a flat 3 damage, strength 8, I want to say, every
Yeah,
3.
the flat 3
Yeah,
damage was the key bit.
yeah.
He opted
Especially if you fail your 5-up Bill No Pain, right?
he opted instead of doing the 5-up Feel No Pain on his unit to actually put an additional point of AP on the weapons
Mm,
on one of the
yep,
units,
fair.
and also +1 attack on that unit. So that unit really like killed like
That's
7
it.
Terminators by itself.
Yep.
And but the thing was, Abaddon was right there. And this is a recurring theme. Like Abaddon
Yes,
was
yeah.
there. He was
We're
there.
going to discuss this.
He
Yeah.
was waiting. And yeah, sure, he killed all the Terminators. But the problem was the GSC army is just absolutely made of paper.
Yeah.
And you just can't take the hit back. So when the dust cleared, he was left with like a spattering of models here and there. And by turn 3, we knew where the game was going. Malik conceded, but he said, "Oh, let me play out a few more turns." We played out a few more turns, got a few exciting fights in, and then we called it a game there. So
then on to round 3. What did you? So GSC dispatched
yep.
pretty easily. Abaddon doing absolute work there, as I can imagine. Probably how many aberrants did Abaddon actually end up taking down?
So the Malik had a unit of 10.
Yeah.
Abaddon killed 9. Uh,
Yeah, okay.
Glorious.
300-point model. Yep. All right. Round 3. How did Abaddon win you this game?
Abaddon did win me this game. This was this game was prime Abaddon. Okay,
Didn't even know
so this is against Dino Co.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Dino had just beaten Innis in the previous round.
Yep.
So Dino was the hero of the Invitational.
Yep.
And we lined up against each other. He's the most chill dude in the world.
Yeah, man. I didn't get to meet him at Invitational.
Oh,
I was just
so nice.
Man. Oh, at the main event. I really
Yeah.
wanted to meet him, but he seems like a great guy.
Yeah, and he was just like he has a little accent, and he's just like Vic the voice, and I was like, oh, you're so cool, Dino. And then we set up. He had a Tau list, which was based around 3 units of suits, so a little unit of 2, a unit of 3, and a unit of 5. It was Tau set with 2 Sunshock bombers, Shadow Sun, and a couple of commanders. It's classic list, and then the chaff with the Kroot and the Kroot Hounds. He got first turn here, so I had no buffs on my Terminator. And Dino looked at me, and Dino said, "I'm gonna go for violence. I'm gonna kill your whole Terminator blob this turn because I know I won't be able to kill them for the rest of the game if I don't deal with it now." So he only used the 2 Sunshock bombers. That's it on the Terminators, nothing else, and he managed to kill 6 out of 10 there. So
that's pretty good value.
Yeah, he got his early game hit there with the Sunshock bombers, and then he
wait before we go on. Is a completely legitimate question. Is killing 6 out of 10 Terminators good if you give up both your Sunshock bombers for free? And you can resurrect your Terminator for distance.
So it's a 50-50, right? Because if you get the Terminators low enough that you can drop them to below 3 models. So say you have multiple activations, you can kill 3 Terminators with your big blob of crisis suits. Then everything else can shoot any characters that are around them, which is quite significant. That makes the moving into the middle something which I'm doing it as a high-risk proposition. Now, Dino unfortunately made a mistake of following up the Sunshock bombers with 2 crisis suits. And these 2 crisis suits went right into the middle around my L. They were fully buffed, and the 2 models killed one of my entire Noise Marine squads. Decent enough trade there, because that was the only Noise Marine squad that was kind of threatening that side of the board. But what happened was that allowed Abaddon to use those 2 Noise Marines as a springboard into the middle of the board. So then Abaddon was almost outside his deployment zone at this point.
Which is not where you want him to be.
Yeah.
On the top of your turn 2 as Tau, you want him to be maybe in the middle of the board.
That's it. And then the 5 the 4, and then I healed one. So the 5 Terminators were also kind of sprungboard in front of Abaddon at this point. So it gets to Dino's turn. He's had to like be pressured back a little bit more now, so he's right in the corner. And
you killed both the Sunshock bombers on turn 1.
The Sunshock, like one Blastmaster almost kills an entire Sunshock bomber, because they're only a 4-up armor, so AP3 goes straight through with 4 damage hits. You need to get 3 through, and a Sunshock bomber's dead. So yeah, essentially the game went down to the Noise Marines right in the the Terminators in the middle. He killed all but one of the Terminators and took the 3 wounds off Abaddon. And then Abaddon charged in. Between my shooting and Abaddon, I killed all of the suits. Every single suit is dead in the army, and I'm right in his deployment with Abaddon with 6 wounds on him. So that means he cannot kill Abaddon in a single turn. Exactly.
Well, you get a single turn,
Yeah. He could try and blow up a suit and try and do D3 mortal wounds. Huge swing, and it requires him to sacrifice a commander at this stage to do it, which is perfectly fine. So
So Dino wanted violence, and he got it.
He got the violence. Abaddon went in, and that was my invitational day one. So at this point, the invitationals gets shifted over to the end of round one. So essentially, on the first day, the Saturday, there'll be 3 games of the main event, and at the end of the day, I'll be playing the finals, which in this case would be against Manny Chima with his 175 racks.
Yep. And
Uh,
I actually went into this game thinking,
mm,
look, I think a lot of people, and yourself included, thought this was probably not a winning match
mhm,
because we thought that you probably didn't have the output, and if the 175 rack list were to just blob in combat on all the objectives,
mhm,
that they would be scoring because they're obsec, and you would just be kind of like being denied primary, et cetera, and the secondaries are probably balanced a little bit.
mhm.
So yeah, it was very surprising to learn. I'm going to spoil it completely that Vic tabled 175 racks in 3 turns.
Mhm.
And this just goes to show you how much output this list has, and especially if you let an opponent's entire army collapse onto yours with all all 3 phases in one go. So, what were your thoughts going into that matchup? Because we had obviously discussed this and thought about it a lot. Was it kind of the same of what I was thinking?
Yeah, I mean, so Manny did play a rack list in the past where he was kind of utilizing the -1 damage trait. Since then, there's an Army of Renown which has come out, which means that he has to have a full army of racks. He doesn't get any of those traits, but instead, when his units of racks get below half strength, he gains a 4-up Feel No Pain.
Mm.
Um,
Does that better? Do you think?
uh,
I feel like -1 damage is really good.
I think the point is that it's an interesting one. I think
Mm.
because the -1 damage got nerfed to not be effective against Strength 8. I know it's not so relevant, but there is a lot of Strength 8 combat out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Potentially, so. But I
Mm.
know what you're saying because he didn't have many hidden combat characters that you normally have in these kinds of lists.
Mm.
So yeah, no succubi because you
Yeah.
can't take that. You had to take
And
Drazar as the
And I know
only one.
for example that the succubus and archon and stuff like that in that list were a couple of key pieces where they actually won him a lot of games.
Yeah.
It was actually the characters that would duck into combat, deal a ton of the damage, and then the
Mhm.
racks consolidate around those characters, and you still couldn't get to them. So it's an interesting decision on that. I hadn't really thought about it until I mentioned it just then, but mm,
Yeah, absolutely. And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, look, I can't. And also, it's an awful mission. Like Tide of Conviction is is like, what the hell? You don't want a dawn of war with 6 objectives and a whole
yeah,
two. Um,
great.
so I looked at it. I was just like, look, probably I'm not going to be able to kill enough racks quick enough, and he's just going to crunch me on the primary. And by the time I do kill the racks, it's probably too late. That's the whole way
Mm.
that Manny's list works.
So who went first?
Manny went first. This
Hmm.
sucks. That's even worse.
Yeah,
I don't even get around to shooting. And Manny, so 175 racks. He wasn't able to hide all of them in deployment, but you better bet he was able to hide them as soon as he got 1 turn of movement. So
yeah,
he
yeah.
used the middle ruins to then make the entire army hidden.
Mm.
Unless I make some angles, so I have to like jump out and get angles, and I know I'm going to be shot then. Every unit of racks has 4 ossifactors or 5
Yep.
ossifactors,
Yeah.
which are
If you don't know what those are guys, it's basically a strength. It basically wounds everything non-vehicle on a 2-up.
mhm,
It's -3 AP damage too, and it's got like a 24-inch range. So each rack unit has like 3 shots of that, I think.
four.
That 4 shots, which basically auto wounds on a 2-up.
Yeah,
So they're actually really good guns.
like
Like,
really
yeah, you
good
you get taken aback.
at killing noise marines.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking, right, well, what can I do? I've probably already lost this game. Let's get out. I'll shoot a little bit, and let me just like run some cultists out. He'd put some scourges on my home objective in order to get 2 of the
Mm.
bonus points, which
That's
probably
a bit of a head scratcher, that one.
yeah, it's a bit of a
Mm.
weird one. I mean, it makes sense, but it also allowed me to use my 10 cultists, jump out,
Mm.
charge the scourges. I shot them a little bit, killed them, left one alive, but I essentially got a big move block across one
Yep.
flank.
And
Uh,
I'm gonna stop
mm,
you right there, guys. This is a bit of a lesson for everyone. Is that when you put something in front of your opponent's army, they're not just gonna shoot it, like a very good player is not just gonna shoot that. They're gonna see that unit as a complete freebie of movement. So if you put something in front of your opponent's army, they're not just gonna go, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot that because it's easiest right in front of me." It's like, how can I get really greedy with my angles, shoot something, charge back into that reposition. So it's very dangerous putting something in front of your opponent's army like that, in my opinion.
Absolutely, man. Because what was even moving 12 inches is a fast unit. But now this
Yeah.
unit of cultists has moved 6 inches, 2d6 charge, 3-inch pile-in, 3-inch consolidate.
Yep.
That's looking at up to 24 inches of movement on a unit of
Yep.
cultists. So yeah, I have this unit of cultists blocking off a flank, and the main difficulty for me in this matchup in terms of damage output is that the homunculi give +1 toughness to its racks.
Mm.
And toughness 5 is a huge breakpoint for my army because everything is strength 4 or strength 8, pretty much. So it's.
Importantly, all your bolters are strength 4, right? So all your ranged attack before you want
Yeah,
to get into anything, apart from
exactly.
the blastiness, is
My
are
Blast
strength 4.
Masters, the profile that I want to use is a Strength 5 profile,
Oh, right,
the
great.
wide profile. So
Yeah.
annoyingly, it's like really awkward to have a full army of -1 to win. But Manny stacked both of his homunculi on one flank, which is the flank
Mm.
that I move blocked, and the other flank had no homunculi. So there was about 75 racks that had just toughness 4. So I had waited a turn on that flank and then shot it a little bit. And then Manny was kind of in two minds. He knew that was his weak flank. So he kind of came out a little bit on turn 2, kind of halfway, not really committing or anything. And on his other flank, he managed to kind of charge the cultists, get right up into my deployment zone. And he thought, okay, if I've got the cultists here and I can't move forward onto Vic's objective directly, I'm just going to put my whole army on Vic's objective. So he essentially moved 100 racks directly in front of my deployment zone. Um, and this was probably the critical error that he did there that neither of us realized. He had underestimated my output. I'd overestimated his toughness here. If I put my whole army into him, in both of our heads, I don't kill 100 racks. I kill 50. That's kind of the level we were working at. And
Yeah.
if I kill 50, I've already lost the game. Like there's no
Mhm.
point. But after charging, punching, shooting everything, I killed all 100 racks. Every
100
single
big
one.
ones.
100 racks
Clean
dead
them
on
up.
that turn 2.
Ship them out. Get them off the table.
Just scooped 100 racks off, and
Scoop them up.
it was all done with a combination of kind of shooting, combat, and morale, importantly.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
And also on my turn 1 of shooting, I'd realized and asked Manny, how does that 4+ field of pain trigger? Like if I kill 18 racks with one attack, do the last 8 get a 4 field of pain? So you have to slow roll it. And he was like, no, it's only if at the start of your attack you're at half strength or under.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Right. So I was kind of timing everything so that I kept the units as close to 11 models as possible before I hit them with the most substantial stuff. Say combat is probably the most substantial way of me killing things.
You're a genius.
So I put loads of units at 11 and then I charged into combat. So they were all getting 5 up feel no pains against me. And then they were losing like the last 2 models to morale, and he was left with like 1/1/1 model everywhere almost.
Great.
And then he played out his turn. His army just has 0 damage. Drazar went in and killed a single Terminator. He killed 1 unit of Noise Marines. So he didn't do anything significant.
No.
And then the turn after, we just rolled a few dice, and he he was tabled. So there was nothing left there.
So that was the Invitational done and dusted.
That's it. So
destroyed
I
him.
managed to win the Invitational, which is which for me is like a really big achievement. I know it's only a small event, but like it's something I've always wanted to do, and I've always seen people doing while I've been playing 40K, and now to actually do it and actually win it, it was extremely satisfying. I had such a big buzz after that.
Yeah, I remember you were buzzing the next day. You're
so
like,
happy.
I just killed them all. Like 100 racks.
They all died.
They just died.
Yeah.
GG. So Abaddon, I'm assuming, just to keep this trend going, was an absolute powerhouse in that game as well.
Yeah, he was good, but the Terminators were the MVP in that game.
Yeah, because they just have lots of shots and stuff like that.
And Manny can't kill them. Even with the artifactors, he can't kill them. So without the Terminators, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Funnily enough, I think that matchup is a pretty clear example of why you would want to be playing the old version of it.
Oh, true.
Instead of the 4-up Feel No Pain one because the characters would really chew through. I mean, I think it's still tough because Abaddon is really strong, but yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, congratulations. Obviously, winning the Invitational was wicked.
Cheers, Dave. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Invitational happened after day one of the games, but maybe if you wanted to kind of like run through your entire LGT event, that might be this might be a good time to do it. You can.
It'll be a bit shorter. Yeah, I'll run you through. Yeah, day one was pretty relaxed. What did I have round one, man? I remember my first 3 games of day 3. I kind of think typically are pretty straightforward. I think I played against Custodies, that was pretty straightforward. And then I played against, I want to say, played against something round 1. I'm sorry if I can't remember your name. I really apologize. But then I had a good game against Lewis, I think from Bad Moon Cafe.
Lewis Fitzsimmons.
Lewis Fitzsimmons, yeah.
Very
yeah, great. Yeah, had a great game. We were playing Death and Zeal, and it was he was playing Sisters, just a very stock standard Sisters list. Yeah, it was just really good, man. I tell you what, and this is very thematic of my entire tournament. Either my dice rolls were absolutely atrocious, or my opponent's dice rolls were insane. So we had one point.
Lewis Chapman, not Lewis Fitzsimmons. That's
Lewis Chapman. Sorry, we had this moment, right? My turn 1. He's put his Rhino on an objective where he can disembark. What I did was I was like, okay, I looked at his CP, he can emergency disembark. I lined up my Harpies to block both sides of the Rhino so that he couldn't disembark emergency on both sides of it. Particularly, he couldn't emergency into the ruin where I couldn't see him. Lined up my Zoanthrope smites so that I could smite it as well. And this is all kind of before the game because I slow rolled the deployment of his Rhino so I'd know where it was going. And then I lined up my Warriors with an advance to get onto the ruin so I could see all the way down parallel with the Rhino. So whatever it got out, I was blasting everything. And it was like 1 unit of Repentia and 1 unit of something else. And so I'm like, great. Smite. The Rhino's on 3. It's got 3 left. I'm like, okay, great. Okay, shoot my Stranglethorn Harpy into the Rhino. Takes nothing. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit unlucky, you know. I'll shoot my little squad of Warriors, like 12 Despotas. Takes no damage. I'm like, okay, you know, all right. You know, AP2 still, you know, yeah, it's all, okay. I'm like, it's all right, because I got my heavy Venom Cannon Harpy at neg 3 AP, flat 4. Slow roll my hits. CP1, 6 hits. I'm like, okay. 5 wounds. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. I'm not going to complain. That's pretty good. 3s into 3s, you know, you convert 5, you're happy. Rolls 5/5. I'm like, are you joking me, bro? And my army is just like, you know, he could disembark right into my army and get into me. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I had encountered some redundancy for that. I put Venomthropes behind a lot of my stuff so that if he charged, I was going to be able to get some counterplay in terms of making a fight last and stuff. But I was just like, man, like, come on, give me a break. And then, of course, now I have to shoot my whole warrior brick into it and completely blast it out of the water. But I've got no shooting left after that. And tried to roll like a 12-inch charge with my my Tyrant guard. But yeah, I mean, so I still ended up winning that game. That's a really favorable game. Obviously, Vicky used to play Sisters, and we used to play quite a bit versus each other. So that one, I think, when you got 2 Harpies, is pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. So you
Especially
kind of
when you can pick off stuff.
Finishing up day 1 on 3-0, wasn't it? There.
Yeah, 3-0 day 1.
Yeah,
I didn't really feel like I'd played. Yeah, I didn't really feel like I'd played any games that really pushed me.
Yeah.
But then, so we have round 4 of day 2. So I'm like, great. I get to my table, and this is in the top tables, and my opponent doesn't show up. And so everyone around me is kind of joking, like, "Oh, did he just see the pairings and decide to fuck that?" So I was playing against a guy named Kyle Perry, and I didn't recognize him either. And he was playing Harlequins, and we were playing Tide of Conviction. So, like, this is the exact matchup that Kyle really did not want. Tide of Conviction. I've got the 5 Obsec Neurothrope. I've got just Warriors. You know, hold 2, hold 3, Dawn of War, like against Harlequins. You know, I was like, okay, you know, this is going to be a good one. Very favorable matchup for Tyranids for sure. So he arrives late. We have to put the clock on because the TOs were kind of watching me like, your opponent isn't showing up. You need to put the clock on. And then he kind of just arrives in time. The TO was by me and said, like, you know, we're going to have to repair you. And I just begged him. I was like, please, like, don't repair me. Like, I don't want this guy to get 0. Like, I just want to play the game. And then, yeah, he was just on the way just after that. And then, so we ended up playing. Just a really lovely guy.
He was super cool, wasn't he?
He was super nice, man. Yeah, we got along absolutely great. We were chatting tons during the game. Like, through thought processes and stuff like that. Like I like doing that. I think I enjoy the game a lot more when I do that with opponents, even though it is detrimental to me to a certain sense. It'd be like legitimately helping my opponents play. But I mean, it was a comfortable-ish matchup anyway for me, so I figured I'd rather have given the opportunity to learn it. And not that he needed that a lot. He was really sharp. But yeah, it was great. Bouncing around with Harlequins everywhere. Eventually, I got to pick him up. Had actually 2 nice rolls there where I super smited his Star Weavers with my Zoanthropes with the 3d6 to cast, re-rolling into a super smite when I CP'd the cast,
Nice.
just to make it that much more consistent, because that's the easiest way to pop the Star Weavers.
Mhm.
And yeah, that game was really good. He was playing a fun list. He was really sharp on doing the fallback 6 inches and everything like that with his troops, which was nice to see.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a really nice guy. And then round 5.
Oh,
Okay.
yep.
So I'm just gonna put out there, guys. I know a lot of times I've said, like, there's the luck in 40k is not really that important in terms of there's a lot of way to mitigate luck, and there are a lot of ways to reduce the variance in your rolls to play a game that is more outcome orientated because of your skill rather than anything else. But when you're playing against some of the top games, you do need to take risks, and that's going to be a thematic thing of this game. So I ended up playing against Alexandra. What's his
Sacco?
Alexandra
Alexander
Sacco,
Sacco, yes.
who ended up winning the LGT.
Yeah, winning
So
the
he's
whole
playing,
event.
winning the whole event. So he's playing Emperor's Children, very similar to Vic's list, but he's got a Disco Lord and he's dropped a unit of Noise Marines. He's got something else. So I'm like, okay, cool. And my private thoughts were, I knew that this list was very strong and that this is gonna be a tough game. He picked Assassinate and No Prisoners, and we're playing the Angular Deployment mission where you get to move the objective. And I thought, okay, off the top of my head, like I've got a secondary advantage here. I'm going to play KG. I end up going first and actually doing almost nothing. I flew my Harpy, bombed 5 Noise Marines, and just flew off the board. Killed like 1 or something like that. Repositioned my army, raised some banners, did almost nothing. Went for a mental interrogation as well, because that's where I was going to leverage it. His turn 1. Classic, very thematic thing that he does. 6-inch advance the Terminators right onto the middle. But what he does is he leaves his Abaddon out the back of the Terminator brick. And I'm like, thinking to myself, like, if you're going to leave him there, like, I'm going to kill him.
Freebie.
Like, okay, great. My turn 2. I'm like, okay, 3d6 to cast on my Tyrant. Okay, I'm in 4-up invulnerable at the moment. No, I'm in +1 to cast right now. So I haven't even used the 4-up invulnerable because I didn't even pick one on the first turn because nothing was going to happen. Move my Tyrant next to his Abaddon. Asked him many times, can you make me fire last? No, can not make you fire last because he couldn't heroic the character and use the fight last for 3 CPs.
Right.
He only had 2.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. I knew he could heroic a character, and I was like, that's fine. Okay, smite with my Hive Tyrant, 3d6, get a super. I'm like, okay, 1 damage. I'm like, okay. Psychic Scream goes off, 1 damage.
Okay.
Okay, all right, not great, but we still got plenty in it. Okay, and by the way, guys, like the flyer killing Abaddon is like pretty much game at that point. For reasons I'll describe later, but
just so people know, Abaddon can only take 3 wounds in a phase, but the Tyranid Reaper of Obliterax allows you to ignore phase caps like that on any of the damage that the Hive Tyrant does. So
exactly, yeah. And even if you didn't have the Reaper, I could still kill him in 1 turn with the flyer because I could smite him. And then I was like, okay, I've still got the charge. On the charge, use the impact 1 where you deal mortals on the charge, roll a 1. I'm like, great. Because on a Hive Tyrant, you deal flat 3 on a 2-up because you got the Horn Chicken keyword, right? Okay, at this point, I'm like, okay. All right, this is
going well.
This is a little bit rough,
close.
And Alex is just like, dude, what are your rolls, man? Like you just rolled like 5 1s in a row. I'm like, okay, it'll even out. I'm like, okay. I mean, that's pretty rough. Like, failing the 2-up is kind of like, come on. Okay, anyway, going with the Reaper. Pay for full rerolls to wound, because he's T6, I'm going to be winning on 3s, I want to do it anyway. Okay, go into swing. Out of 5 hits, 3 1s. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Reroll 1s to hit, hitting on 2s. Reroll 3 1s, 2 1s. I'm like, okay, so I've just hit 3 times out of 5. Like, that's not fantastic. At this point, I'm going...
It's still okay.
Yeah, I'm like, it could still make it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he's transhuman. Roll all my hits. Roll all my wounds. All fail. Okay, not great. Reroll. 1 wound got through. 1 wound on my Hive Tyrant got through. And the thing is, guys, this is like a 95%, maybe greater than 95% chance of working, because on the smite, Psychic Scream, you easily average 3 on 3d6 to cast, +1. You'll always pass. On the charge, you have a 16% chance not to do anything. Okay, so that'll put him at 6. Then with the Reaper, you should wound 4 times, which would mean that he already takes 4 wounds. He's on 2. Then he would have to pass he would have to pass 2, fail 2. So, and then you have 2 talent attacks on top of that as well. So the chances of this going off are really, really high. Anyway, okay, I don't kill Abaddon. And then just the luck just goes out the window after that as well. His Abaddon 1 scoops my Flyrant. I'm like, okay, that's great. So his Abaddon moves close to my army. His Abaddon then makes like a 10-inch charge into my Tyrant Guard. Like, great. His Terminators make a like a 2-inch charge because he has the auto 6 into my Neurothrope. I'm like, okay, my Neurothrope would probably live here, but he gets more than I expected. And then this is the real kicker. He charged 3 Possessed into my Venomthropes and my Neurothrope, right? Fail the 3-up fight last. Like, great. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then he attacks my Neurothrope. I'm like, okay, like, there's no way my Neurothrope's going to die, right? 3 Possessed, 16 attacks. Hitting on 3s, right? So 11 should go through. Wounding on 4s because of Transhuman. You should get 5.5 maybe. My Neurothrope dies. He's got 6 wounds and his damage is to 2 attacks. His attacks are 2 damage apiece. I fail, like, straight away. I fail 3. My first 3 saves I fail on a 3-up invulnerable. I'm like, come on. So my Neurothrope dies. And after that, I tried for a Hail Mary play where his Abaddon was on 5 wounds. I fell back my new Venomthropes next to his Abaddon within 3 inches. Moved my other Venomthropes next to Abaddon in 3 inches. Tried to get the double fight last to cause 2 mortal wounds to then try and take him down to 3. And then my Warriors multi-charge to do that. And then I failed both the 3-ups as well. So it was just like, man, I mean, that was a very rough game. After that, I just said, Alex is just like, man, I'm sorry, bro. Like, like me and him were chatting a lot, and he was like, look, I think you win this game like 90 out of 100 probably, and I really need these big swings to go my way and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. So that was my basically out. So I'm out of the tournament at that rate. And, disappointing, obviously. But the thing is, I think, it's obviously really disappointing, but at the end of the day, I think I played that game right. And you can always go back in 40K and look back and say, should I have taken that risk? Should I not have done that? I could have maybe played safer, but there are times where you have to say, this is the correct way to play the game.
Yep.
This makes the most logical sense. I remember talking to you afterwards. You're like, of course, you got to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
And when we play, you never leave your Abaddon for that exact reason, right?
Yeah,
and
I'm terrified.
Yeah, and he didn't put it in Creations of Baal either. I was like, did you put in Creations of Baal? He's like, no. I'm like, so you can't fight on death. You can't make me fight last. I'm like, well, okay, like, And then I could have overrun. So here's the thing, guys. He heroiced his character in. Even if I killed Abaddon and he locked his character in, then he would have either had to have killed my Flyrant with shooting, which means that he couldn't have shot my Harpies, or he would have had to kill my Flyrant in melee. But I have 2 CP for fight on death in melee as well. So if he kills it in melee, I get a whole nother activation with my Reaper, which is like extremely hard to come back from as well.
Yeah.
So either way, if my Flyrant lived there, it would have been.
It's a huge threat saturation turn, basically. Which
and I get the deny as well because he's going to be -1 to cast for my Flyrant, and I get the deny as well on the on some of the Terminators.
Some of the defensive buffs, yeah. So it's a game-winning move, like the swing there, but also a game-winning loss if it somehow just doesn't work out, and you can't predict that, Dave. So as you've correctly analyzed there, so dice games beat dice games sometimes.
Exactly, and I think that's the way to look at it at the end of the day. Is that as much as we do talk, there is an element of luck to it, and I think one of the things that when I used to play Magic and what like that as well is that to win a tournament, you really have to be, you have to be on a good run. You have to, things have to be going away at the end of the day, and those matches where it's a very top end match, obviously you beat you, myself, and Nassim as well.
Yes.
To make it to win the event. So very high end top match. Definitely knew he was a very competent player, really good player. And you need to have things going your way, to make a deep run in a tournament. And that's what happened to me at Las Vegas as well. I went first majority of my games in Las Vegas. Just had things going my way the whole time. I was just in the zone. I was just feeling it. Everything seemed to I was just catching the good end of the 50-50s more often than not, And I think that's what's required to be in a good tournament, to make a good deep run for whether it's a super major or an 800-man tournament. Yeah. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I've known it for a long time. That even for a five tournament game, which is this is a lot, is a big tournament, five games,
Mm,
5 game tournament. It's you need luck in pairings. You need things not to swing against you. You just need those moments that push you through when you think you're going to lose, because there will be moments where you think you're going to lose in
hmm
most events, and that's extreme, like very exaggerated. I find in these long events.
mm,
Like I've done a couple of Bournemouth events where it's been 8 games for everyone.
hmm
And you need stuff to go your way, or you will take a loss somewhere. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter how good you are or how good your army is. Um, as soon as you get towards the end, there are a lot of players who are just as good as you. Like, for
exactly. Yeah,
example, Alexander here is as good as either of us. He's a brilliant
for sure.
player. And things went his way, and he didn't make any mistakes. That's the critical thing. If
Well, we did leave his Abaddon out in the middle of nowhere
Oh,
for me to kill.
that's true. Yeah, okay, okay. Fair play. Yeah, but okay, he got away with it.
But you're right. I mean, aside from it, he was a great player. Like, I watched his games in the finals.
Mm,
He was a great player to watch as well. And
yeah,
yeah, so I mean, obviously, my hat's off to him. Congratulations.
yeah,
I'll
absolutely,
hopefully, if he listens to the podcast, I'll love it. But I'm going to send him a message on the social media or something like that, just to tell him
absolutely.
congratulations. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed our game as well. And yeah, I mean, he's a great player to play against. Really nice and chill.
Very
And just
nice.
look, what I would like to say is, a perfect exemplary example of someone who, oh, I missed this, whatever, go back and do it, something like that.
Mhm,
When I'm maybe he knew who I was or what I was playing for and stuff like that. But even if he didn't, he was a really nice guy, playing the game the way it should be played, in both of Vic's and I's opinion, which is great to see in the community.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. So
Alrighty, that was my LGT.
that was
Anyway,
it.
let's zoom through your day one, Vic. What
Yeah,
did
I
you
mean,
get day one?
I'm
Cruise
just going
through.
because so guys, I did go 5-0 in the
hmm
main event, the before the cutoff. So I'm not going to go through my games necessarily, but I just wanted to say a thank you to my opponents. I played against Adam Walker round one, who was running Corn Demons and was an absolute hero, and then I
Corn
played against
demons.
yeah, full Corn Demons.
Got him.
Abaddon, one banged Scarbrand, that was glorious.
No.
Of course he did, and then Robert Rose with his Grey Knights. I played Oliver Pickett at the end of the first day, who was running Creations of Bile. Creations of Bile, that's a super interesting game. But I do play another one, which I will briefly mention. So then Matthew Putney was Necrons. Yeah, he's so nice. Matt and his son were there at the event, and he played
Awesome.
Necrons. We had a great game. It was very close. It was 83-71 to me.
Mm.
And then finally, I played against Simon Finney on the last game of the main event before the cutoff, who was playing against Creations of Bile as well. But a super interesting list teched in with 18 Flamers, Dave. I don't know if you
Yep.
saw that one.
I remember coming to you turn two on that game,
Yeah.
and you were like, "Man, I don't know if I'm going to win this." This is very typical of Vic, though, guys. Like, "Oh man, I don't know if I'm going to win this." Oh yeah, I kind of just killed him. That's just, they just kind of all died.
So Simon played a really tight game at the start of the game, but I often find people, the mistakes creep in the mid game, the little
Mhm.
suboptimal plays, and in this case, Simon missed a bit of efficiency in his fighting when he had a good chance to really beat me. But I think he was suffering a little bit from having played 5 rounds, and once you
Yeah.
start to get the headache, you kind of just want to be over and done with it. So,
Yep.
thanks for the game, Simon, and he was really nice all the way through. But I managed to win that one and move on to the cut. So the cut was the 22 top players, which were the 22 undefeated players
hmm
at this point. So 22 people were on 5-0, and then it had to get down to a top 16 in order for
Mm.
there to be 4 more rounds to play.
Yep. So the
Um,
bottom 12 played a
exactly.
knockout bracket, which
That's
gave
right.
you 16 undefeated. So you didn't have to play the shadow round,
No, I
as it's
was
called in LVO.
I was number 9, so I
Oh,
managed to
nice.
skip the shadow round and have a little chill through the evening. But I did have to stay until 8 p.m. that day for one more game,
Yep.
which would be the first of the round of 16.
hmm
So I ended up getting paired into Sid Sidhu,
So
who's
this is when I saw this pairing, I thought this is probably the best matchup out of the top 16 that you could have gotten, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is, because this is Imperial Knights, and my list with the Blastmasters and the Terminators and Abaddon, I'd already played this once against my teammate George White,
hmm
and actually Sid's list went even wider, so it had
Yeah, this is
all little
14.
knights.
It's 14 armages, right?
All yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All little baby knights, no like
Mm-hmm.
multiple buffs of 4+
Yep.
invuln and -1 damage. He can only put that on one knight a turn, and it
Yep.
doesn't stick.
Yeah.
So me and Sid, we played 2 turns, and then he conceded at that point. He said,
You blasted him off the board.
"Yeah," he said, "Look, Vic, I really enjoyed this game, but it's obvious that I can't do anything in this one." And he was right. He was just losing 4 knights a turn every turn. It's not playable
Brutal.
for him.
Yeah, that's
Um,
so brutal.
so we managed to get a little bit of early night. We finished our game first. I went
Yeah,
around,
nice.
looked at all of the other games, and we kind of moved into the top 8 after that. And the top 8, it's probably worth going through them.
Yep, for sure.
So
Have you got them by you?
yeah, I've got them next to me. So
There you go.
uh,
Professional.
table 1 for the top 8 was me and Mike Porter. Now, again, I got a little bit lucky here. Mike Porter
Ooh.
was playing Harlequins, but in the morning he was unable to actually attend the event
Yep.
because he wasn't able to take time off work. So I ended up getting a buy on that, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Lucas. Lucas was playing. I was from France, and he was playing Tyranids. He had a list with 3 units of 5 warriors, 2 units of Zoanthropes, and 2 Neurothropes. So lots of
Yep.
mortal wound output. He still had the 2
Different list,
Harpies.
that one, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit different. And he was playing against Lewis Fitzsimmons. Was playing the Creations of Bile list that I featured in the last episode.
Yep. Great game, by the way. If you guys want to check that game out on Facebook, that's a good game, actually.
Absolutely. It's on the London Grand Tournament Facebook page. I
Yep.
think they streamed that one.
Mhm.
And Lucas, like I was talking to Lewis a lot after the game. I didn't really talk to him before the game at all.
Mm.
And Lewis made the mistake, which, and I see this a lot, and this is a talking point. When you have an army that usually plays a certain way, for example, with Chaos Space Marines, usually the Terminators or your brick goes into the middle and the characters follow with them.
Mm.
It's very easy to do that every single game without knowing the game when you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Lewis, this was the game, in my opinion, that I think he shouldn't have done that. He essentially put his whole army in front of the Tyranids and
Mhm.
went for the threat saturation approach, very much like what Manny did against me.
Mhm.
And both Manny and Lewis, this was their game where they just had to trade a little unit here and
Mm.
there, keep pinging away the primary. Lucas had 1 unit of gargoyles and he put them out as a screen to potentially gain him points on primary on his turn 1. Lewis put his whole army into the gargoyles, very much like Manny put his whole army into my cultists. But if Manny had sent 1 unit of Rax into the cultists and Lewis had sent 1 unit of possessed into the
Mm. The
gargoyles,
goggles. Mm.
exactly, and then the primary score would have been put down and then weighted.
Because and the crucial point here, guys, is that Zoanthropes only have 18-inch range on the smite, and the
Correct.
smite, once you kill the chaff, the smite start hitting the important stuff at
Mhm.
Creations of Bile, which is Lucas's game plan.
Mhm.
And I watched the interview with him post game, and he said he's a very patient player, so he
Mhm.
likes to play that way, and he actually played it very, very well.
Very well.
And so that was when the Creations of Bile player went all in. Lucas just duck and weaved and
Mhm.
dodged it really, really well. So he actually played that turn. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant turn that he
Absolutely.
played.
And it's not intuitive for the Tyranid
No, it's
player to
not.
step back with his whole army.
No,
Uh,
he's got a very different play style, I think, which is really interesting.
Absolutely. So yeah, Lucas managed to win that game against Lewis. Commiserations, Lewis. And then Nassim played against another Creations of Bile player. So
Mm.
every table had Chaos Space Marines here,
Yep,
guys. There was 2 with Emperor's Children, 2 with Creations of Bile, and they were
yep.
all on different tables. So Nassim with his Tau, he was playing a Farsight Enclaves list, which was suit heavy, no Riptides, and 2
Hmm.
Sunshock Bombers, and 3 commanders. None of them were Shadow Sun. Against Ewan's very interesting Creations of Bile list, which was a double detachment. It did have a Brick of Chosen instead of Terminators, and it had 4 characters, I think, like 2 Demon Princes and Lord Discord, and so all the punchy characters.
Yep.
Nassim managed to take a narrow win on this one, winning at 92-86.
Oh, that is a narrow win. I
Narrow
thought he
win.
would have just blasted him off the board, actually.
Yeah, I think Nassim got
Mm.
all the momentum because he got the first big hit, everything like
Yeah.
that. Very much like Lewis, Ewan did what he probably was doing every game, put his whole army in the middle.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just lose too much when you do that against really good
Maybe I should
players.
play that army. You just put your whole army in the middle of the board. That sounds great.
No, see. Don't listen to this, guys. You play against Dave. He's way more nuanced than this. Then the final round was Alexandra, who beat you,
Mm,
and with his Emperor's Children, and he was playing against Dick van der Haast, who's
yep,
from Netherlands.
yep. Really good
And
player.
yeah, Dick, brilliant player, and he was playing Necrons.
Necrons. Yep.
Yes,
We featured his list in episode 3, actually. That was one of the lists where I said if I was going to play it, this is
yes.
one of the lists I'd play as well.
And Alexander, so I was free, so I was wandering around here.
Mm,
And I think I came over at the moment that Alexandra made a 12-inch charge with his Terminators,
yep.
and I think 3 other 9-inch charges or something like that, just across his whole army.
Look, I'm going to put it out there, guys. Look, this is Alex's tournament to win. Like, when you're making 12s and 9s like it's nothing, that's,
Yeah.
you're on fire at that point.
Yeah, Dino was standing with me, and I asked Dino, "Oh, how's this game going, Dino?" And Dino was just like, "Oh, the Necrons are definitely going to win this game." I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
fair, fair." And then I turned around, came back, and then for the charge phase, and Dino was like, "I don't think the Necrons are going to win now."
You know, it's
So
funny because I think Necrons are actually quite good against the Emperor's Children
yeah, I think
because
so too. I had
especially Dick's build, with a lot of little OBSEC units, is
mm,
exactly just feed them in, feed them in. So yeah,
but yeah, Dick was unable to play the game after his whole army got charged on those long
yeah.
charges.
I mean, once Abaddon gets in, right, it's just
Yeah, I mean the
tough.
Terminators charge from one flank over to the other flank, like across the board. There's nothing you could do about that when you get hit on both sides when you weren't expecting it.
Yep.
So yeah, well playing Alexandra, and he goes through to the semifinals. So the semifinals was me paired up against Alexandra's
Oh, what I
Emperor's
would say
Children.
before we
Mm,
go on,
yes.
I think I remember texting you. I think it was an absolute godsend not hitting Mike Porter in the round of 8 as well.
Oh
Given
yes.
the fact that Mike had the drop, because I know that I think you mentioned in one of our previous episodes that Harlequin matchup is not ideal by any means,
No, it's
and
really
obviously
tough.
Mike is a great player as well. So
Mhm.
that was a bullet dodged.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I did. I mean, that would have been a super tight game, like a
Yeah,
really down to the edge kind of wire
would have
kind of
been a
game.
great game to watch.
Yeah, and they wanted to put us on stream as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, it is what it is, and well done to Mike for going undefeated anyway.
definitely.
So I was paired up against Alexandra, and Nassim was paired up against Lucas's Tyranids. So
Mm,
Nassim is a brilliant player. Like I think Dave knows him very very well.
yep.
And I think he's like one of him and Dave, in my opinion, are the upcoming people like in our generation of 40k players. I think Dave has established himself now, but Nassim is one of
Mhm.
those names which I think he's inevitably going to start winning huge events here because
For sure.
he's
And
a
I've always said this as
mm,
well, and Vic knows this in our private chats and stuff like that. Is I've always said Nassim's a great player.
yeah.
Just needs a better army because we've played maybe 40 or literally 40 or 50 games, guys.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
during COVID on TTS.
And
Yeah,
watching Nassim play, he's very consistent and he's very logical in his thought processes and sequencing of his moves. And he's also very fair play. He's very, very clean player.
yep.
So he was paired up against Lucas, who's also a brilliant player, as we saw from the previous round. Now, Nassim has an advantage here because Nassim has set up his list to deal with Necrons and Tyranids. He's got multiple little units of crisis suits with double burst cannons. And essentially, you can deep strike one and give them full hits and rerolls, full rerolls to hit and wound with Farsight Enclave strat for
Hmm.
CP and for 2 CP. And you can also kind of buff up another little unit of 3 and just throw them in as a sacrifice unit. And the strength 5 on the burst cannons with very high volume of shots is very good into both Necrons and Tyranids.
Hmm.
So Nassim was well set up for this. He did only take a narrow win at 72-61, but he did manage to pull through the victory there. Uh,
Yep.
that one wasn't streamed, and me and Alexandra played longer than those two, so I wasn't able to actually see the flow of the game. But
Yeah, I think from my recollection,
mm,
the Harpies went in, did some pretty big damage turn 1, but Nassim was able to clean them up very easy.
mm,
And then Nassim actually killed like 15 warriors, 2 Harpies on turn 1, I think, without being too overexposed.
mhm,
But the Zoanthropes were a little bit difficult to chew through. But I think after the first turn, Nassim had quite a big. Oh no! And then Lucas's Flyrant went in and killed an entire um, 8-man, the big crisis suit
ooh, ouch.
squad. It's like 4 suits, 4 drones or something.
Mhm,
I mean, Lucas rolled um, three mortal wounds on the charge, D3 extra attacks, rolls a 3, exploding 6s, has like 9 hits or something like that. Every single one wounded, like, which
Ouch.
yeah, I wish my Flyrant did
Boom.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so then Nissim was actually on the back foot there, but I think the thing about that list is that people sometimes don't realize that actually the characters are really, really powerful,
Mm,
and sometimes the characters do more damage than the 3-man squads.
correct.
So yeah, I think Nassim just pulled it out after that, and actually I think he took the aerospace. He's been
Yes, he
taking that a lot
does.
secondary,
Yes.
which is slightly impressive. I don't think I've seen anyone take that. So there you go. There's still undiscovered stuff out there, guys.
Yeah, I think because our other main Tau player in the UK is Carl Grundy, and he
Mm,
plays R&D. He sets up for R&D
yeah.
while Nassim is setting up for
I think
aerospace
aerospace
targeting.
is better actually because if you go second, aerospace you can do it with every single unit in your. You can do it with multiple units, so you can do it. Your units are super fast too,
Hmm.
so you can actually do it 3 times in one turn at the end of
Hmm.
the game, which is
At the
like
end
a
of the
lot
game.
of points.
Correct.
Yes, which is interesting.
And
But anyway,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, let's go on to my game with
let's go into
Alexander.
your
So
game. So this game was all the way on stream. You guys, you can check it out. It's just on the Facebook London Grand Tournament game. But this is essentially the mirror matchup. Fair to say, I think there's a little bit difference. Vic's got a bit more shooting,
hmm.
and he's got, most importantly, a second psyker, which
Hmm.
means that you can take mental interrogation,
Correct. Yep.
which is a big bonus in the mirror,
Yep.
especially because the mirror suffers a lot in secondaries.
Hmm.
And then Alex has the Disco Lord. So he's got another, what I thought from an outsider's perspective, he's got another big melee threat.
Hmm.
But the Flame is also quite good in that, as we will come to find out as well. But yeah, what were your thoughts going into the game, Vic?
So, just on a list perspective, I mean, it's identical list, but like you said, I can take mental interrogation while Alexander can only take assassinate. He has
Yep.
no other choice of
You got an
secondary.
advantage in the list, do you think, right?
Immediately, I'm on a passive game, I'm 15 points up.
Yep.
And, you know, that's a tough one for him because
Hmm.
if I go second in this game and he has to play for 12 primary on a few of the turns,
Hmm.
meaning he has to go into the middle first, it's impossible. He's never winning that game going second with my secondary advantage.
Yep.
He's never winning that game going first with my secondary advantage. But fortunately for him, I ended up going first here. Now, that's not an auto loss for me here because I have the advantage on the secondaries. Um, so I did a little bit of maths in my head and I essentially set up my Terminators in the middle. I managed to get every single buff off. So that confirmed my decision that I'm going to go into the middle of the board here.
Yep.
And I funneled the Terminators in between the two ruins in the middle
Hmm.
so that I knew if he tried to fight me face first, he would only be able to fight with 6 Terminators, probably at most.
Yeah.
And he'd be able to get Abaddon in the side as well with that. With that, I was expecting to lose 4 or 5 Terminators because actually other Terminators don't do very much to your Terminators.
Yeah, they kind of just stand there swinging. Really, they
Yeah,
don't do much.
exactly. Abaddon, sure, he can do some, but he's not like absolutely super powered at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes for full rerolls to hit on Abaddon, he's not got full rerolls on the Terminator. So something's going to mess up here if he's only hitting on 4s.
Exactly right. If his Abaddon only hits on 4s and has no rerolls to hit, then the chances are that he converts after that is maybe 4 attacks. You save,
Uh,
I don't know, maybe you save 1 or
Absolutely.
2 in some models.
Yeah, and strength 5 means, he's, well, no, I mean, he's -1 to wound, so he's only wounding
Yep.
on 3s here.
Yep.
And yeah, there's a 5 up feel no pain on the 3 damage hits as well. So it's very likely that it takes 2 Abaddon wounds going through the invuln for him to
Yep.
actually even kill a single Terminator. So Abaddon doesn't kill many fully buffed Terminators. But and then I just positioned little things here and there. I made a nice play where I set up my cultists on behind a piece of terrain, really on the edge of my deployment zone, and there's an objective just outside it, and I just dipped a cultist outside, and there's a 1 CP stratagem called Tide of Traitors, which can be used in the command phase. If I'm within 6 inches of my deployment zone with a unit of cultists, I can bring back D3+3 cultists.
Nice.
So that maintains primary for me, which was really tasty. So I essentially set up so that I can try and get 12 primary on turn 1,
Mm.
on my turn 2. Unfortunately for me, Alexandra, and I was kind of happy. I was thinking, okay, Alexandra, he's not going around the edges. He's going for this termy block in the middle.
Mm.
And he sets up all of his blastmasters, everything to go for this termy block. I had a couple of termies on cover. He shoots all of his blastmasters into them. He kills 0 with his shooting.
Yep.
So immediately I'm like, okay, he's going in now and he's going to be stuck in the middle, and I'm going to keep the objective in the middle because he's not going to
Yep.
get enough models on there. And it's game over at this point. Unfortunately, when he went in, he rolled his chain fist, 7 attacks, 7 4-ups. Uh, Rolling to wound on 4s, 7 4s.
Yep.
I rolled my saves, 6 fails.
Yep.
I
I remember
rolled
watching that.
I
Yeah.
rolled my feel no pains. I fail almost every single one.
Yep.
And then I ended up, by the end of that, after failing morale as well, losing 8 out of my 10 Terminators rather than the
Yep.
4 I had predicted. Um, so
That's rough.
that's,
I remember you actually saying on the stream at the time, yeah, that might be game.
yeah.
Because I mean, when you lose that much, right, and your opponent has what their whole Terminator brick just sitting right in front of you, and they're Abaddon on the same number of wounds as your Abaddon, you're just like, am I just down 8
Yeah.
Terminators now? Like,
So the tides got turned there because now he was doing my game plan, which was he's going to be in the middle getting 12
mm.
primary.
But he had bottom of turn as well, which
And he
is
had bottom of turn, so he's
yeah.
going to get the 12 at the end. So already I'm like, right, I can't actually displace him from this.
Mm.
But he did something weird. He
Mm.
tagged Abaddon here.
Mm-hmm.
No, he didn't tag Abaddon. No, he didn't tag Abaddon. So what happened was in my next turn, my 2 Terminators, I thought, right, okay, he's in position now. I can get Abaddon in. I can shoot all of his noise marines and everything around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can actually like outkill him here. And I can get access to his Abaddon as well to put some damage in 2 phases, maybe even 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what happened was
You fell back with your
I
Terminators,
fell
right?
back with my Terminators, and I looked over at his CP, and as I moved them back, he said, "Okay, I'm going to do the 3-inch follow you in."
Mm. Is it
Uh,
3 or 6 inches?
it's 3 inches. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
3 inches. So my Terminators
Mm.
were outside the range of this, but my Abaddon was right there.
Oh yeah.
And then, and
Oh yeah, and then he gets to activate first, right? Because he
uh,
fights first.
no, we both fight first, so I would still get to fight first. But the point was that I then couldn't really shoot anything, and his Abaddon was screened and everything like that. So
Oh yeah.
I tried to like catch him and was like,
Yeah.
yo, Alex, wait, can I just move my Abaddon first?
Yeah.
And Alex
So
was like, no, I need to do this,
yeah,
and
which is completely
it's
fair, right? Because
his
you
choice.
only noticed after like
Yeah,
he started picking up his
he's
model that you could hit the Abba
exactly,
and yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And well, yeah, as he said the stratagem, he'd committed to it, and I had committed to my fallback. So I said, "Cool, Alex, let's play it out. Let's carry on." But I said, this is really bad
yeah.
now." So my Abaddon's in combat. I can't interact with his Abaddon, and I can't interact with his Terminators in the shooting phase. And I can't move. Importantly, I can't move my Abaddon around to engage his Abaddon. So my a plan of killing Abaddon on this turn is gone.
All right, everyone, we're back. Sorry, we had a little technical glitch. Vic's gonna get on back with the game. Vic, you just his Terminators are just consolidated back into you. Give us the recap from the top.
Yep, absolutely. So he's got me. He's got me in combat with Abaddon. I can't really one tap his Abaddon anymore. I can only get a little bit of damage in from the sides, but and my Abaddon's stuck in combat. My Terminators have fallen back. Now the aim is to try and clear as many of the noise marines around the side as possible and try and take some pressure off me. He had moved forward with everything, so he's making that little creeping advance you'll often see Emperor's Children do. But that did leave a lot of units exposed. So I decided to keep my whole army in cover and just tuck out all the Blastmasters, just tuck onto the objectives and shoot away and see how many noise marines I can kill, which was not great, to be honest. I didn't manage to do enough damage. And
They
he
are
was
hard to kill as well, right? You kind of killed 2, you killed 3, and you're like, oh, great.
absolutely,
Didn't do
but
anything.
once they dip into half range of the Blastmasters on the wide profile, it's all 2 damage attacks at strength 5s, wounding on
Yeah.
3s. The Venomcrawlers are all strength 6, 2 damage attacks. So realistically, you expect to probably kill, 1.5, maybe 2 squads. I didn't even manage to kill a squad. So Alexander was still left with a lot of momentum there. But I did whittle down lots of squads. So he was left with like 2 models and multiple squads. And, I managed to kill a chunk of cultists and stuff like that. In combat, Abaddon killed 3 of the Terminators. 3 of the Terminators, they were fully buffed. and was stuck in combat. He managed to put 3 wounds into my Abaddon, taking me down to 6, and I managed to get some shooting sideways into his Abaddon to take him down to 6 as well. So yeah, we were at this point, and it was his turn. Now he's got all the momentum. This is his killing blow turn if he wanted it. I was very lucky that he made a rare mistake, the only mistake realistically in the game he made this turn, which was to not fall his Terminators back from my Abaddon. If he had done that, he would have been able to kill Abaddon. Only on 6 wounds, he could shoot me and then punch me, and I'm done, dead. And there's no way of coming back from that. He can reestablish screens on his Abaddon. He just needs to run away from me quite far away. And he just gets Abaddon back behind the Terminator, shoots me, punches me, and game over. So he instead decided to stay in combat here. So he can't shoot Abaddon. So my Abaddon is not dying here. He threw his Abaddon into my 3 Terminators to finish them off, and then he tried to shoot me. My whole army is in cover here, so he didn't do much damage at all with his shooting. And I still had exactly all 5 of my Noise Marine units alive at the end of this.
Nice.
He punched Abaddon down to 3 wounds, and I... at this point, yeah. So at this point, he has 0 buffs on his Terminators. And my Abaddon is going in with full rerolls, hit wounds, Slanesh strat, everything, and does 9 wounds and also 43 mortal wounds here. He rolls his save, and he starts rolling Feel No Pains, and he just rolls all 5 ups on the Feel No Pains.
Just crazy. That's his tournament, man.
It just kept going, and... when the dust settled after the mortal wounds, he had 1 wound left on 1 Terminator, which is the worst possible outcome going into my turn. Because
sneak peek, guys, that 1 Terminator turned into about 3 Terminators because of the resurrecting.
It did, and I'm not falling back from combat. Like if Abaddon is free there, he's going ham into Alexander's army, but I'm stuck. So yeah, that was that really. So then
that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for him to then go on and pick up the rest of your army and really score the assassination points that he needed, right? Because he actually had quite a lot of pressure on your top field objective that was slowly mounting, which kind of meant that you needed to draw one of your big characters out there. And actually, Alex had slow rolled the Disco Lord throughout more or less the entire game, hadn't he? So he'd saved it, and he did that against me as well. Saved it for like turn 3, 4, and 5. Where the damage potential wasn't really there to go pick it up, and it was kind of going to take over the rest of the game, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the Disco Lord did a similar. To be fair, it didn't do significantly more damage than my Demon Prince. The Demon Prince would have done the same role in that situation, which is just kill a Noise Marine squad that was being used to screen him. And essentially, the last of my resources was to reduce his primary and just block his Disco Lord from actually getting anywhere substantial.
Yeah, which you did a good job. I saw you move block it a couple of turns.
Yeah, I did. So by the end of the game, the Disco Lord was still just in the middle. But the 3 Terminators went character hunting and managed to kill 2 characters for his assassinate. So,
he rolled a 6 on that melter. Straight up. Boom,
rolled a
6
damage. On that melter. He even managed to charge the last character, but wasn't able to kill him with the 3 Terminators. So those 3 Terminators basically got 3 character kills that he would otherwise not been able to do. So yeah, it was it. And Alexander, apart from the one mistake, he played an extremely tight and meticulous game, capitalized on the fact that he went second and managed to take the victory with like a 15-point win, something like that. So it all added up correctly, really. He overcame my secondary advantage and went into the finals against Nassim.
Yeah, and the final game against Nassim, you guys can obviously check it out on the London Grand Tournament Facebook page. A really interesting final game. Nassim, obviously, with Tau, playing on Dawn of War with the 3 middles and the objective. I believe, off the top of my head, Nassim went second, and Alex only picked up 1 of the Sunshark bombers. I think he left 1 on little to no wounds, but then you can top bracket it to move its full distance if you're Tau as well, which I thought was surprising. I would have thought he had killed both, but maybe he just got a little bit unlucky.
He probably should have. I mean, it's a big advantage to go first in that matchup. So, like against me, he needed to go second. He got it. Against Nassim, he needed to go first and really get the momentum there. So he managed to drop a full Sunshark bomber and get the buffs on his units. That's the key thing.
The buffs on the unit is the key part.
It's huge. It's huge because that means that he can approach into the middle buffed, and it's really nice, And then it was interesting though, because Nassim made a really few very technically good plays, and managed to catch Alex, who had deployed his Master of Possession exposed at the back of his board. And the Sunshock Bomber was able to fly behind the Master of Possession and get direct targeting on him, and just able to kill the Master of Possession on turn 2, which is a huge swing.
Is that big
No,
swing?
I'm sorry, turn 1. It's a huge swing, because that means that then his Terminators can die on a slow game from there.
So the Master Position, just to recap, gives you access to what on the Terminators?
5 up, Feel No Pain,
Right,
plus 1 toughness,
Mm.
which is huge. Oh my god, being a T4 in this matchup, he has burst cannons and plasma
Yeah.
rifles. So yeah, and also the regen a model. So
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
triple cast, which is
It's a
huge.
great
So
model.
that's a great one to pick up for Nassim on his turn 1, on NASA's turn
Yeah.
1. Yeah,
And that
then
kind of, I think a lot of people thought the momentum was definitely in Nassim's way on after that.
correct.
And Nassim had even picked off a couple of small units, I think Possessed on the near the left-hand side of the board ruin. And because, at the end of the day, I think Alex has to come out a little bit, but he'd left, I think he'd maybe committed one too many units, or actually going for that objective might have just been a little bit overcommittal when you can't tuck in your whole unit into that ruin. And then kind of what happened from my point of view with the game is that Alex tried to make try to get his Disco Lord into combat. Or effectively, of course, he had the big Terminator brick and Abaddon in the middle. But Nassim was actually darting all the way around the board and avoiding the Terminator brick for the longest time, which is, I think, probably the correct way to play it. He definitely analysed that one well. But Alex had a little bit of side pressure with his Possessed on the opposite side of the board to where Nassim's primary army was. So it looked like a relatively even game, but I think after Nassim's turn 2, everyone sort of thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a bit of a tower stomping, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Nassim looked like he was way ahead there, because Alex was essentially set up in a position where he's not really doing much.
No. He's got a lot of points sitting in the middle of the board
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
no clear way on how to get them into
Lots of
Nassim's army,
points,
really.
can't engage. Nassim's going to be going into Kauyon shortly for the exploding sixes. And Alex decided to actually commit and try and make a long bomb 9-inch charge over with his Disco Lord into some suits. And he hit the 9-inch charge. And that, I think, that alone just swung the momentum there. That was a full unit of suits that was going to shoot next turn uninhibited. And then Nassim had to start making more desperate plays. He tried to one-tap Abaddon, left him with 1 wound, unfortunately. So yeah, and then from there it was a steamroll. As soon as Abaddon didn't die, the Disco Lord got the momentum. Alex just went straight through Nassim's army, because there's not much in a tower army nowadays. It does a lot of damage, but once you get through all the units, it's just a few characters after that.
Yeah.
And if everything dies and you're left with characters a couple of turns too early, it's really hard to dig yourself out of that.
Yeah, precisely. So congratulations to Alex. The French have won the London Grand Tournament.
Absolutely.
And obviously congratulations to everyone that made the top 8.
Well done to
fantastic bunch of
Nassim.
players. Exactly, yeah, well done to Nassim. And I think a great representation of our community here in the UK and in Europe, both on the sportsmanship side of things and on the player skill side of things as well. A lot of great players in there. And just all around, zero drama, lots of gentlemanly play and stuff like that. That's what you want to see at the most highest echelons of competitive play.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm very happy to have lost to Alex, and very happy that he won the London Grand Tournament, traveling all the way from France. So Alex, if you're listening to this podcast, you are an absolute legend, and good job for smashing it.
Smashed it.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're going to discuss it a little bit more in the next part, but yeah, I just wanted to ask you, how you felt about the whole event, and what your thoughts are now that it's over.
Yeah, so obviously it's disappointing. I think in the previous episode I talked about wanting to win the ITC, and this would have been I think if I did very well in this tournament, would have put me in a very solid position to do that. But I think looking back on it, you can't be too disappointed, because a couple of things that I realized over a short amount of time of playing this game, but more or less on the long time of playing games like Magic and whatnot, is that you can play a perfect game and you can still lose. And if you play a perfect game and you still lose, then you got nothing to be worried about, right? It wasn't your tournament to win. And you need to, at the end of the day, you need to have a good run to win a mega deep tournament like this. And that's just you need to have the little things going away and whatnot like that. And that simply just wasn't the case for me. on the Alex and I both know that if my fly rank goes in and goes there, then it's basically clean house for me after that. Pretty straightforward game. And he was he's a great person to play against, so it's perfectly fine losing to someone like that. And yeah, it didn't. I think I'm over it now. I've had my solace, my couple of whiskeys. But
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I mean, great time overall. Like, it was great to connect with so many people that listen to the podcast again and see all the feedback. So it was a great time overall. How about yourself?
Yeah, really good. I mean, I played a lot of games. I played
A
11
lot
games
of
in
games.
total over those 4 days. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a good test of stamina for me and mental strength and physically as well. And actually, I made it through all the way to the end, still feeling relatively fresh. I had my ups and downs in terms of fitness by the last game of each day, but
Yeah,
generally, I was perfectly fine. And it kind of feels like a little bit of an achievement to even play that many games.
for sure.
But on
It's like
top
a
of that,
marathon of 40K.
yeah, I managed to win the invitation, which was a big achievement for me, but also get third place in the main event, which is really
It's
nice.
huge.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, that puts me at rank 1 in the ITC global rankings for
there you
now.
go.
Until you hunt me down over the next few events,
Maybe.
we'll we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our discussion on the London Grand Tournament, and we'll catch you guys in part 3.
And that concludes part two. We hope you're enjoying the fireside, and we'll see you momentarily for part three. Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to part three. We're going to be talking about what our aims were kind of after the Grand Tournament, London Grand Tournament. We're going to talk about the balanced data slate in relation to the meta at London. And then we're also going to be talking about Leagues of Votann buffs really quick. So, I think I'll let you crack on first. What's your mindset for competitive 40K after the London Grand Tournament? Obviously, coming
Yeah.
off a huge high.
Yeah, it's a huge event. It feels like I've just ran a marathon, and I've got that little buzz. But yeah, I mean, life is busy as well, moving house, so I can't do too much 40K going forward for a little bit. But I'm definitely going to try and attend at least just the big events
Mm-hmm.
coming up. So we've got one each month for the next 3 months. We've got Coventry, which is a 3-day super major
Mm-hmm.
in November, I think. Yes,
Yep, in
that's
November,
right.
yeah.
And
November
then in
4th and 5th and 6th, I think.
December, we've got Leicester. And
Mm-hmm.
then in January, we've got Nottingham. So,
Yep. And then we've got
uh,
LVO in February.
perfect. So, we've got 4 super majors over 4 months. And
Yeah.
that's my plan. Are you going to be going to all of those, Dave?
Going to be going to all of those, mate.
There you go.
I'm
Who
going to
knows
get back
what
my
we'll
rank
be
one
running?
spot somehow.
But interestingly for me, I had a little look at the faction scoring, and I'm doing quite well in both the Chaos Space Marine and the Eldar faction rankings for the season. So I might just try and kind of alternate between those two factions for the upcoming tournaments, unless something really crazy happens to the balanced data slate. But and see if I can maybe nick the first place in those by the end of the season.
Yeah,
And that just gives you something to aim for, really. It doesn't mean too much, but it's kind of cool, right?
for sure, for sure. And for myself, yeah, like I said, I'm going to be attending all those events. My life is going to be very busy coming in November as well. My parents are staying with me here for 5 weeks, so I'm not sure how much practice I'm going to be getting in, considering there will be a balanced data slate on top of that as well. So, hopefully we'll go well. But I think, look, like I've always said as well, is that practice makes perfect. So, in this game where you got to understand all the changes and everything like that, having those reps in are a huge benefit at the end of the day as well. Yeah, so that'll be it for me. Vic, what were your thoughts on the meta after the grand tournament? Then, what two takeaways? You've only got two. Two
I've only
takeaways.
got two takeaways. So, two takeaways. Okay, so my first takeaway, if I've only got two, is going to be that I think Necrons are much better in America than they are in the UK in
Exactly.
singles
Yep.
events. Yeah,
Yep.
do you
Definitely
agree
the
with
same
that
thing I
one?
was thinking.
And I'll let you expand on that one then. And I'm
Hmm.
going to do my second takeaway, which is I think the statistics on Chaos Space Marines are potentially a little bit deceiving. Week on week, both their win rate and the number of players have been increasing. The number of tournaments won by Creations of Bile is now putting them at kind of a top tier level. But at the
Hmm.
same time, their win rate is very close to the 50% mark. And the top 8 in LGT was the only event where Chaos Space Marines were highly represented in the top 4 in this weekend, which is really weird when you see the power levels of both Creations of Bile and particularly Emperor's Children played correctly. And I think Dave has now been exposed to it quite critically because he's not only seen me play, but now he's seen Alexandra play it as well, and very, very similar lists. I'm sure that list is going to be copied quite a bit, and it's going to be very interesting to see if that has a significant effect on the win rate of Chaos Space Marines going forward. It's a hard one because at the moment, Emperor's Children sit at about a 45% win rate. Creations of Bile sit at a very high kind of 56% win rate. And the rest of the Chaos Space Marine factions are all just very mediocre. And the faction army as a whole sits at about 50%. With a high player number. But they do sit, even with the statistics now, about kind of 5th or 6th place in terms of power level of armies. But I don't know, Dave, do you think that that's going to potentially change a bit going forward?
Yeah, well, like we have always pitched this podcast. This is a UK focused, UK TC focused podcast. I think that you're bang on in that Necrons are not as strong on UK TC because there's a little bit more exposure, and you kind of need to commit into the middle a little bit more as well. And I think there were a couple of good Necron players there at the tournament for sure. Dick did a very deep run as well. However, I think the takeaway is actually I think Chaos Space Marines can be quite good into Necrons because the Creations of Bile list, because you're such a naturally aggressive list and you fight on death as well, so you double trade up into Necrons. I think that pairing happened quite a bit throughout the meta.
It did. Alex Harrison lost actually to Creations of Bile in the final 16. So I
Exactly
watched
right.
that game, and Lewis Fitzsimmons went straight through the Necrons.
Got him.
Absolutely through them.
And and I think you can't. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Chaos Space Marines are just it's a debut event for them, I would say, really, in so many ways. It's the breakout event. I think they're incredibly strong. I think that you could easily argue that Chaos Space Marines on UKTC are up there with the best army in the game, probably.
Absolutely.
Pipping Tyranids, maybe. But I think their matchup into Tyranids is slightly worse, which might be their slight downfall. But I think, they're a complete A-class S-tier army. And I think if we're now talking about armies that need to probably get toned down a little bit, Chaos Space Marines, I think, is definitely have to be on there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, like, for example, I see a lot of similarities between the list I was playing and the list Nassim was playing. Because when you look at both lists on paper, it really looks like there's not very much in the list. But if you get the order of operations correct, the level of synergy of the list just throws the damage output, all the tricks through the roof.
Yeah.
So
Blastmasters hitting on 3s no matter what, with exploding 6s basically means they hit on 2s.
Absolutely. And yeah,
pretty good.
Obviously, when you look at individual rules, they all sound really strong. And when they come together, they do feel really strong to play with as well. But like I posted on a few Discords and, I was just trying to get people's thoughts and feedbacks. And most people said, yes, I think especially Emperor's Children are going to become much more popular following this event. But most people's takes are that they're going to become more popular. People are going to try them, fail to use them correctly, and then stop playing them. I don't know how much that'll be true, but I think especially if top players jump onto it, like players with good fundamental game knowledge who can leverage the strength of an army like this, I think they are very good, albeit maybe a little bit less forgiving than most of the top tier armies. Maybe not. Here we go. Let's go. Let's get the spice out.
All right, guys. I'm going to do a little bit of number here.
Yeah.
I think this army is extremely forgiving, actually. Your Terminator brick is extremely tanky. You have fight on death. You have. Okay, this is why I think the army is strong, and this is why I've always thought is that the 6-inch movement strat combined with the 6-inch charge strat for 2 CP to get a 12-inch consistent movement boost is too strong. And the reason I think that's too strong is because you're taking a unit that normally moves 5 and adding a flat 6, 100% guaranteed for 1 CP. That's far too good. Yeah. In addition to that, you can create an auto 9-inch. You can make you can create a 22-inch threat range reasonably consistently for a unit that would typically move 5, not even be able to advance and charge. They can advance and charge. The Terminator brick is extremely similar to Tyranid warriors, and the reason this is because they're effectively transhuman because they're T5 -1 to wound. In fact, T5 -1 to wound is actually better than transhuman a lot of the time. Obviously, you have to cast +1 toughness, but that's beside the point. They're infinitely more tankier because they can get a effective 0 up in cover, which is the way Tyranid warriors typically die. They don't do as much in melee, for sure. Their shooting is kind of comparable to Tyranid warriors, but the main difference maker is that they are extremely fast. They're faster than Tyranid warriors, regardless of what anyone wants to think, because you can move 11 inches for 1 CP. Now, when it comes to this army, what I would like to see, and I want to see some Tyranid nerfs as well. What I would want to see for this army is I want to see that strat, the 6-inch movement strat, become 1 CP for a 5-man squad, 2 CP for over 5, whenever you use it. So you've got to pay 4 CP if you want to do that combo in 1 on a 10-man Terminator brick. Then I want to see Abaddon. I think it's pretty clear that Abaddon needs to go up in some points. I think every single game I watched of Chaos Space Marines all centered around Abaddon. Now he's 300 points, and he can quite literally win games by himself. Like, he doesn't obviously win you the game by scoring and everything like that, but your opponent has to respect the hell out of Abaddon, right? You can't just go around and ignore him. So I think those two parts of the army are the parts that just feel really oppressive, because a unit that's so tanky and has such great output, being so fast is just really bizarre. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, what do you think about the Noise Marines? Because they're, in my opinion, they're the unit which stitches everything together
Yeah,
here.
yeah. I mean, noise moons are extremely good, but I think, look, but genuinely, I think if you nerfed the strat to the movement strat, and then you nerfed Abaddon, like maybe you made him plus 50 points, I think that would be enough to bring the army in line a little bit more. Like, I wouldn't personally, if I was balancing, I wouldn't go too heavy on it, because
So
I don't want to do balances that way personally.
my other point would be that it's a tough, because the win rates are very
Yeah, but
unlikely
win
to
rates are
reflect it,
regardless. Win rates are
right?
regardless. We all know this.
But
How it
let's
performs at the top level is really what matters, right?
let's talk about Tyranids, for example.
Sure.
I have played a lot of tournaments since Tyranids came out. And since the ninth edition Codex has come out, I have not lost a single game against Tyranids except against you.
Right.
And like, I'd say there's a lot of similarities between Tyranids and Emperor's Children, but I think it's going to take a lot for the general consensus to be that Emperor's Children are anywhere near the level of Tyranids, even after this tournament result. I
I
don't know.
completely agree. No, I completely agree. Like 100%. Because, and this is the kind of the point of the podcast as well, of course, is what Vic and I experience. And Vic and I know that Emperor's Children are on the same power level. Like, you
I
wouldn't
know.
disagree
Yeah.
with that, right? It's true.
Now I've struggled to believe it myself for a long, long time. It's
Yeah.
only just kind of clicking that, okay, this is very strong, especially on UKTC terrain.
Right, precisely, yeah. And so that's the difference, mate, guys. And it's you've got to be a good pilot at the end of the day as well, right? Like, we had Lucas piloting Turners there as well. Potentially if my Flyer and Ender whiffed, I would have been up in there maybe as well. But Tyranids wouldn't have, even if I was in the top 8, wouldn't have even been in the same. Would have still had twice as many Chaos Space Marines in the top 8, which
Oh yeah.
On an 800 player tournament, it's kind of averaging out, right?
Yeah, it's quite
That's
amazing.
that
Two
really
creations
goes
of
to show
power,
the
two
power level.
Emperor's Children. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
How would you nerf them? What are your thoughts on where it needs to get? What's the most oppressive part to you?
It's really tough
The
because
game plan seems very similar in like almost every game, right? Like the
but
Terminator's moving
you
seems.
know, Lewis lost a game because he followed that game plan against the Tyranids. If he had done a different game plan, he would have been fine.
Mhm.
And it's a tricky one. I think you can't go too hard in on general things, and it's going to be very difficult for GW to do a targeted nerf on Emperor's Children here. I think the only easy point of correction is potentially the points cost on Abaddon to make him a little bit more significant, because 300 is quite generous.
Yep.
But then armies often do have a faction defining generous unit, but yeah, I think if you were going to correct Chaos Space Marines, it would probably be like 50 to 75 points on Abaddon, which would probably be enough, I think. And then yeah, maybe you could do a targeted enough on Honor the Prince, but that's such like
It's a lot of nuanced knowledge you need to make that decision.
it's a
Yeah.
huge amount of knowledge to target that one out. So
In other words,
maybe
do you think like, between us though, do you think that would be a appropriate nerf? 1 to 2 CP change on that?
so that's a targeted nerf on the Terminator brick, right? Um,
Yeah, sure.
because they already nerfed the strat. The strat was better before. It's become worse because
Okay, regardless of that though, I'm putting you on the spot. Making it 1 to 2 CP. I'm just gonna put it out there. Remember what happened to Encircle the Prey. I'm not saying it's on the same level as Encircle the Prey, but
Yeah.
let's recall what happened to that because I genuinely think that this strat is on the same power level as Encircle the Prey, probably just a little bit below it, me personally, because it makes a unit that would otherwise be slow and easy to outplay
Yeah.
extremely versatile and fast.
Yeah, I know
I
what
mean,
you're
paying
saying.
2 CP for a unit to overcome its biggest weakness
Mhm.
is insane, right? That's like, I mean, you do it every turn.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. The problem is they've put so many little kind of restrictions and nerfs on everything. Like, for example, the Terminators can't take an icon. The Honor the Prince is after you do the roll, as before you do the roll.
Yeah.
They've kind of limited things based on core and marks, so the possessed on core, haven't got icons. And it looks like they've put all the balancing factors in already. I think the Honor the Prince correction is probably the incorrect correction
Mm-hmm.
there. I think that again is very Emperor's Children defining. It's been like that for years and years and years. That
Well,
is there.
I'll correct. I would also do Creation of Baal specific targeted nerfs. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong on that one. So, I would target one at EC and one at Creations of Baal. Or would you just simply put the points up on Terminators so you've got a lot less stuff to play with around the outside?
Uh, what would you change on the Terminators? Oh my gosh, it's so tough, Dave.
I
It's
mean, it's
so
tough,
tough.
right? But like the thing is, it's easy when you say, "Oh, Tyranid should be nerfed, and this
Yeah,
is how
it's
we should
so
do it,"
easy
right?
to nerf Tyranids.
Well, of course, right?
Like,
That's the tough part.
it's
But we know that it's on the same power level, right? And
yeah.
so,
I mean, I would like to see an adjustment in the profile on the Blastmaster. I think
mhm.
that's, in my opinion, I'm playing as the Emperor's Children player. That's the most out of the ordinary kind of weapon
What about
profile on the weapon.
3 shots down to 2?
I think just make the gun 30 inches, something like
Ah,
that.
yeah, of course. Yeah, why is it 48 inches?
It's
That's so
it,
rough.
it's
Yeah,
unnecessary to be 48.
on a little 32 millimeter base guy, right?
Yeah, it's
That's pretty
it's
crazy.
really weird. So yeah, I mean, if I was going to do anything to Empress, they need the flavor because they have the world's worst secondary. They're
Well,
all
and
just like
that's
combat orientated.
yeah, I 100% agree with you. But that's something that we've talked about previously as well. Is that we would like to see codex secondaries for armies that don't basically have a codex secondary be
Mm,
playable. So
mm.
nerf parts of the army, but increase the secondary because that increases the fluff and the fun.
Yeah,
But
like
I think the underlying thing, between the lines, is what Vic and I haven't said here is that we don't think GW will nerf Emperor's Children, and that's
yeah,
just a reality because
I
the
think
balance data set's going to come out quick, and it's under the radar. And if I tell you what, if Tyranids get nerfed, if Quins get nerfed, Necrons get nerfed, and Emperor's Children don't get touched, they're going to be a pretty big cut above the rest of the field, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
Especially if Tyranids get nerfed, because their biggest predator gets nerfed, and
Mhm.
then Necron's secondaries get nerfed, then it's like, yeah,
Absolutely.
it's gonna
Yeah,
be an
yeah, for
interesting
sure.
time.
I mean, I think Creations of Bile are on the radar, so deeply on the radar with very high win rate, winning
Yep.
loads of events, and it's extremely unfun to play against them if you're using a
What's
melee
the
army.
what's the GW balance guy's name? Is it Mike? Mike something? If
I
you're
don't
listening to this
know.
podcast, make sure you think about Emperor's Children.
Don't forget about Emperor's Children. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see them catch that in hindsight, and not make them too overpowered. But, Emperor's Children on Games Workshop terrain are a tenth of the power of them on UKTC
You
terrain.
think so?
Oh, 100%. They can't play on GW terrain anywhere near as well
Yeah.
unless you play a completely different style of army. And at that point, you're playing just as a normal Chaos Space Marine player. On
Yep.
UKTC, they're absolutely premium because of the
Yeah.
firing. Everything adds up.
Yeah, it's true. The firing is a huge component of it for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's kind of what we thought about. Like I guess we've talked previously about Tyranids getting nerfed,
Mhm.
Necrons needing the nerf, and we've kind of spoken to areas of that. Quinn's getting a little bit of a nerf. let's jump on to Leagues of Votann, who have also just got a nerf.
They
Get
did.
fucked. Yeah. So this guys, this like what I would want to say is if you're one of the people that spoke up about this, you were someone that tried to evangelize balance in the game, and this being a bad thing for the game, congratulations, because I think together as a community we really came together and said that this was something that we didn't want to see in a game. And you know what? Props to Games Workshop for listening and having a direct impact on the game before it came to release, before the kind of ensuing iceberg hit the Titanic. We've dodged it. We've done it. Congratulations. And so let's jump through some of the nerfs. I haven't got them up, but we
I've got
roughly know
them.
what they are.
I've
You
got
got them
them.
up.
So
Let's go. Run through it.
I mean, I'll just like hit the main points, but pretty
Go
much
for it.
they got a kind of 20% increase across the board, which is huge increases. The main ones is the Land Fortress went up by 70 points base, so it's 320 points with the 4 ion beams and the big beam on top. The Berserks went up 8 points each.
8
so
points
now,
a model.
so they're
Oof.
30 points a model now, which is 150 points for a unit of 5 of them, which
Yeah, no
is
thanks.
extreme. I mean, but I love that because it's a shooty army that should pay a premium, for having kind of extremely effective combat elements.
Yep,
I
completely
love
fair.
that. And I know that's how they balance Drukhari, how much you have to pay for a Darklance to go on top
Yep,
of their melee army.
exactly.
So perfect. I think 30 points is spot on for that data sheet. The one which is very intelligent, I think, was making the Hearthguard go up to 45 points each. This is the Terminator unit.
You like that change?
I think that is a genius change because I think if they had gone too light on the Hearthguard, the Hearthguard were the unit that covers the biggest weakness of Votann, which is that they're a very predictable linear army.
Yep.
And the Hearthguard allow you to teleport into a completely different position and put out a chunk of mortal wounds and output. And it's very difficult to deal with the Leagues of Votann army, which is kind of surrounding you.
Yep,
So they've put this up so that they're 450 points for a unit of 10, which is extremely expensive for what they do. Extremely. So it's a very elite niche unit that needs to be used correctly. And maybe units of 10 are not appropriate. Units of 8 are more appropriate. But there's a big difference in output when you're trying to do the combo of kind of fishing for mortal wounds on 6s with their Volkite by having 2 more Hearthguard.
And Thunderkin also went up like 5 points, which is kind of good.
That's kind of sad, actually. I think the Thunderkin were the worst unit in the book.
But they were kind of like they were the clear side grade that everyone was just going to go to if they didn't get touched.
That's it.
And then we've got Pioneers go up a little bit as well, didn't they?
Yeah, the Pioneers got let off lightly. They're still probably the best unit in the book. At 35 points a model, they're still very good.
My opinion on Pioneers has changed a little bit, actually. I think they've got a very big footprint, which is interesting. And then we've obviously got a couple of the characters went up by like 20 points, but it works out roughly, guys, to be about 20% across the board, depending on your variant build. I mean, sometimes it was 500 points on top of 2K. Like we said in episode 3, though, is that we thought Votann was probably playing about 380 points up. I think we said something about like that, right? It was about like 20%. You're playing with about 2,380 or 2,400 points. That's almost exactly how much I'm hit by. So, props to GW. I think they've done a great job. The biggest nerf we didn't talk about was the grudge tokens no longer count as an auto wound to 6. So if you auto wound, it no longer counts as a 6, which completely annihilates the Ymir Iron Beam build. I don't think you would ever consider playing that now that that's gone.
Oh yeah, it removes one of the strats from being effective.
Yeah. So I got a couple of hot takes on this. Here's my hot take. I don't think what they did to grudge tokens was good. And this may sound weird, but I would rather have it 6s be auto wound. Auto wounds become 6s, but here's what I would do. I would make grudge tokens only activate on 3 and 4 becomes auto wound 5 and 6. So you'd only get auto wounds on 3 and 4 stacks of grudge tokens. And it only goes 5 and 6s.
Okay.
I feel like that was a nice midpoint to keep it kind of thematic, along with the other points increases. Because what I actually think is these points increases and the auto wound gone is just way too much. I wouldn't even consider playing this army anymore. I think it's given that its secondaries aren't amazing, I think this is a mid B tier army for sure.
That's a serious hot take. Wow.
Yeah.
And I think you might be right that I don't know if they're B tier necessarily. I think there's going
C
to be.
tier?
Oh gosh, no, I meant higher than that rather than
A
lower
tier?
than
All right, I'm
that.
gonna hold you to it.
I think I'm gonna hold them at A tier. I'm gonna
A
hold them
tier.
at
All
A
right.
tier. I think they're gonna be a solid army that wins a small handful of GTs, and I think we need to see how the lists end up, how many land fortresses go in there. I
Yeah.
think
You
the
still
list
play
is still going to
three, all
be
right?
built.
I mean,
No, I don't think so. I think you have points for
oh,
2 because you need to kind of squeeze everything in. So you're going to have to play this with a lot more skill here rather than just kind of like blowing your opponent off the face of the board.
yeah.
And you need to kind of play like Tau. You kind of get similar amount of stuff to Tau, but you're a little
Oof.
bit slower, a
Oof.
little bit tankier.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty obvious where the differences between Votann and Tau are, isn't it? Though you've got one army that's really fast, you've got one army that's
the
pretty
only
slow.
difference is like the Tau advantage is speed, and
Mm.
the Votann advantage is higher damage output and higher durability.
High damage
Uh,
output.
Oh, for
Okay,
sure, for sure.
okay.
I think so. I mean, the two areas that get affected by judge tokens not triggering on triggering sixes to wound is the one of the ion strats,
Hmm.
and also the magma rail. When it wounds on a six, it does spillover damage.
Yeah,
But I think that'll probably be corrected because sometimes you don't even want to have a judgment token on for the magma rail.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
And also, I still think in Ymir that you put out a lot of mortal wounds with the land fortress with the beam build.
Interesting.
So I think the output is still extreme off the land fortresses. But do you have enough
Hmm.
stuff in the rest of the army to support it? I'm not sure.
We're
Obviously,
gonna
no
have to
test
find
games
out.
between us, right? Because of
Yeah, no.
LGT.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, they still do auto wound on 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, 3 judgment tokens,
correct.
right? I mean, that is still really powerful.
It just
So
means that you can't just go in, lose half your army, and then blow them off with the other half.
yeah,
You need to kind of play more technically, build up judgment tokens, do surgical strikes on things. You
mm,
utilize all the tools in your army essentially, and
mm,
I think that is a brilliant place to leave a new army.
yeah,
Very elite, very cool, like flavorful rules. And I think you said it's a very boring army to play. I think it might be more interesting when there's that threat of you need to play this correctly to actually do well with it.
yes. I think that's can be said for basically any army as well. If it's not
Absolutely,
as face roll as it would normally be, yeah, that's definitely true. But
definitely.
I think we're both obviously really happy with Votann getting nerfed. Next time you see me, I'll probably be playing Emperor's Children. I'm
And
going
I'll
to say
probably
that
be
now.
playing Tyranids, who knows?
Fuck off. We could swap armies. Yeah.
Easy. But no, I definitely want to explore Votann. I'm really happy they got a nerf. And I think a lot of people who were excited about the Votann release should be happy with this nerf as well,
For sure.
because it means that whether you're a casual or competitive player, you're going to just have more fun and your opponents are going to have more fun as well.
Exactly.
So props to the entire community for getting behind this. And also, respect to GW for actually doing something. They didn't
Hmm.
have to,
They
but
didn't
they
have
did
to.
it.
They did it.
So yeah, I'm incredibly happy with what's happened, and hopefully in our next podcast episode we can kind of give some more thoughts on post nerf Votann now that LGT is over.
There you go. That's it, folks. That's all we got for episode 4. Sorry for the technical glitches. But if you've got any feedback for us or you want to get in contact with us, just, should be pretty easy to find. We hope you've had a great time listening. And this is me, David out.
See you guys. Take care. Catch you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.